The courtroom was unusually still that morning. Even the air seemed to hesitate. The heavy oak doors creaked open and the sound of heels clicking against marble echoed through the hall. A woman entered, tall, broad-shouldered, clutching a baby wrapped in a pale blue blanket. Her name was Corinne Mitchell, and though few in the room knew her personally, her reputation preceded her. She had been on local news more than once for disputes that most people would have handled quietly. A broken mailbox, a neighbor's barking dog, a parking ticket she swore was a conspiracy. She was, in the words of those who knew her best, a storm waiting for a witness. But today wasn't about petty complaints. Today, she was here to prove something no one in that courtroom was prepared to hear, that her 6-month-old son could talk. At first, a few whispers rippled through the audience. Someone laughed softly, quickly silenced by the bailiff's glare. Even Judge Judy, known for her sharp patience and sharper tongue, raised an eyebrow as she adjusted her glasses. "Mrs. Mitchell," Judy began, her tone flat, unimpressed. "Let's make sure we're on the same page. You're here today for a custody hearing, correct?" Corinne nodded, holding her baby closer. "Yes, Your Honor." "And yet I see on your statement," Judy continued, flipping through the papers, "you've made an additional claim that your baby, 6 months old, can speak full sentences. Is that correct?" Corinne's chin lifted, defiance flickering in her eyes. "Yes, Your Honor, my son speaks. He told me things no one else could know." There was a pause. Then a faint chuckle from the audience. Even the bailiff allowed himself a brief smirk. Judge Judy didn't smile, she simply stared at Corinne, her gaze unwavering. "Mrs. Mitchell, this is a court of law, not a circus. I deal in facts, not fairy tales, so I'll ask you again, are you seriously claiming your infant child can talk?" "Yes," Corinne said, her voice steady but trembling beneath the surface. "He talks. He said his first word at 2 weeks old, and last night he told me his father was lying in court." A collective gasp rippled across the room. David Mitchell, the baby's father, sat at the defendant's table, stunned. His jaw tightened, his fingers gripping the edge of the table. He had expected many things from his ex-wife: drama, accusations, emotional outbursts, but not this. "Your Honor," David said finally, his voice tight with exhaustion, "she's making this up. The baby can't even crawl. I've tried to reason with her, but she lives in her own world." Judge Judy's expression didn't change. She leaned forward slightly, her pen tapping rhythmically on the desk. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said quietly, "we are here to determine custody, not to debate the supernatural. So unless your child plans to take the stand, I suggest we stick to reality." But Corinne wasn't ready to give up. Her breathing quickened, her face flushed with desperation. "I can prove it," she said, fumbling through her purse. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. "I have a recording, you can hear it yourself." The bailiff looked at Judy for permission. A small nod, the room hushed. Corinne pressed play. The courtroom speakers crackled. Static filled the air, then faintly a soft baby's voice. "Mama," it said, a pause, then clear as day, "bad man." A shiver went through the room. Even Judy blinked, momentarily taken aback. The voice sounded too real to dismiss, yet too strange to believe. The tone, childish but deliberate. For a long second, nobody moved. Then Judy spoke, her voice low. "Mrs. Mitchell, that sounds like an edited recording." "No," Corinne's voice broke. "It's real, that's his voice, he's gifted, Your Honor, you have to believe me." David buried his face in his hands. "Your Honor, she's been doing this for months, making recordings, whispering things to the baby, then convincing herself he said them back. I don't even know who she is anymore." Corinne turned to him sharply, her eyes red and wild. "Don't you dare say that. You left us, you left me, you wouldn't even hold him when he cried." The baby stirred in her arms, sensing the tension. He whimpered softly, clutching her blouse. Judge Judy sighed, setting down her pen. "Enough," she said. Her tone wasn't angry, it was weary, almost gentle. "Mrs. Mitchell, let's take a breath. No one's attacking you, but right now you're making a claim that requires extraordinary proof. And extraordinary claims," she leaned forward, "require something stronger than a recording that sounds like it came from a toy." Corinne froze, the conviction in her posture wavered. For a brief moment, she looked like a child caught in a lie, not deceitful but scared. Still, she whispered, "It's not fake." The courtroom's air grew heavy. Judy studied her, really studied her. The disheveled hair, the sleepless eyes, the way she clung to that baby as if he were her only anchor in the world. She'd seen that look before, mothers broken by love, warped by fear, lost between truth and delusion. "Mrs. Mitchell," she asked softly, "when did you start believing your baby could talk?" Corinne hesitated, her voice trembling. "The night after David left, I was feeding him, it was quiet, and I swear I heard him say mama, not babble a real word. I thought I imagined it, but then I heard it again. I recorded it and I realized he was trying to tell me things." David muttered under his breath, "She's been saying this for months." Corinne's eyes filled with tears. "He's not lying, Your Honor, but he doesn't understand. It wasn't about proving anything. It was the only time I felt like someone was listening." The words hung in the air like smoke. For the first time, Judge Judy's expression softened. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, voice low and steady, "sometimes loneliness can sound a lot like voices that aren't there." Corinne's lip quivered. She wanted to argue, to fight back, but her strength was unraveling. She lowered her gaze to the baby in her arms. His tiny hands were gripping her necklace, his eyes calm and innocent. The courtroom remained silent, no more laughter, no smirks, just quiet understanding. But Judy wasn't done. She turned to David. "Mr. Mitchell, do you believe your wife is intentionally deceiving the court?" David hesitated, his anger seemed to fade, replaced by something closer to pity. "No," he said finally, "I don't think she's lying. I think she really believes it, but it's hurting her and it's hurting our son." Corinne's shoulders trembled. "You think I'm crazy?" David didn't answer. Judge Judy exhaled. "Mrs. Mitchell, I've seen every kind of case you can imagine, liars, con artists, manipulators. You're not one of them, but what you're doing isn't helping your child. You need to face the truth, not the one you want to hear, but the one that's real." The courtroom felt like it was breathing with her words, slow, deliberate, final. Corinne nodded weakly, but her tears kept falling. "I just wanted him to be special," she whispered. "Every child is special," Judy said gently, "but not every parent gets to decide what makes them that way." For the first time, Corinne didn't argue. The baby cooed softly, his tiny voice breaking the silence. It was just a sound, meaningless, beautiful, human. Judy leaned back, her tone returning to its usual authority. "We'll take a brief recess," she said, tapping the gavel once. But as everyone began to move, something subtle changed. The audience wasn't whispering anymore. Even the bailiff's expression had softened. For a few seconds, the courtroom was no longer a battleground. It was a room full of people witnessing the quiet collapse of a mother's illusion, and maybe, just maybe, the first step toward her healing. Corinne sat down slowly, rocking her baby. She whispered something only he could hear, not a command, not a plea, just a soft, broken "I'm sorry." The courtroom emptied slowly for recess. The murmurs faded into the hallway, leaving only the echo of shuffling papers and the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Corinne stayed seated. Her baby was sleeping now, his head nestled against her arm, his breath soft and rhythmic. The world around her felt distant, muffled, like a dream she couldn't wake from. She stared at the floor tiles, counting the cracks, listening to the faint ticking of the courtroom clock. Each second felt heavier than the last. For the first time that day, there were no eyes watching her, no whispers, no judgment, just her and the baby. She whispered, "You didn't say anything, did you?" The baby stirred, eyelids fluttering, but no words came. Only the soft murmur of breath, the language of innocence. Her chest ached. The tears she'd held back began to fall, slow and soundless. She felt them land on his blanket, darkening tiny circles into the pale blue fabric. Across the room, Judge Judy remained seated. She hadn't gone to her chambers yet. She simply sat there, watching. The years had made her firm, sharp, and almost untouchable, but there were moments, rare and fleeting, when her humanity broke through. This was one of those moments. She stood quietly, stepped down from the bench, and approached Corinne. No cameras, no audience, just two mothers, one hardened by years of other people's lies and one broken by her own. "Mrs. Mitchell," Judy said softly. Corinne wiped her eyes quickly, as if embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," Judy interrupted. Her voice wasn't stern, it was gentle, almost maternal. "You're not the first mother to lose herself trying to protect her child." Corinne's shoulders shook. I wasn't protecting him, I was protecting myself. Judy sat down beside her, something she almost never did. You've been through something, haven't you? Karen nodded weakly. After David left, everything got quiet, too quiet. The baby cried all night and I thought maybe if he could talk, if he could tell me what he needed, I wouldn't feel so helpless. She looked down, ashamed. And then I thought I heard him say, Mama. It sounded real. I played it over and over until I believed it. Judge Judy sighed, folding her hands. Belief can be powerful and dangerous. It can keep you alive or make you lose yourself. Karen stared at her. I didn't mean to lie, I just wanted to feel seen again. I used to be someone, I used to have a voice. And then life got louder than you, Judy said quietly, so you made one up. That single sentence hit Karen like a wave. She didn't cry this time, she just sat there, breathing, finally accepting the truth that had been clawing at her for months. David entered quietly, unsure if he was allowed back yet. When he saw them sitting together, the legendary Judge Judy beside his ex-wife, he froze. Judy turned to him, Mr. Mitchell, come here. He obeyed, cautious, respectful. You've both been fighting, she said, but neither of you seems to realize who's actually paying the price. His eyes flickered to the baby. Karen followed his gaze. He's the only thing I got right, she whispered. Then start acting like it, Judy said softly, not by proving he's special, by being the parent he deserves. David's voice cracked as he spoke. Your Honor, I never meant to leave her like that, I just couldn't handle the chaos. Every day was a fight, I thought walking away would calm things down. It didn't, Karen said, her voice wasn't angry anymore, just tired, it made everything worse. Judy nodded. Pain doesn't disappear when you ignore it, it just finds another voice, sometimes in ways you don't expect. For a long time no one spoke. It wasn't the silence of awkwardness, it was the kind that comes when truth finally settles into the room. Finally, Judy stood. I'll make my ruling after recess, but I want you both to hear me clearly. No one's losing custody today, you both are, until you learn how to stop turning love into a weapon. Karen looked up, startled. What does that mean? It means you're getting help, Judy said firmly. Therapy, parenting classes, family counseling. The court will decide temporary custody in the meantime, but you'll both work on yourselves separately and together. David nodded almost immediately. I'll do whatever it takes. Karen's voice trembled. So will I. Good, Judy said, her tone softening again. Because your son deserves two parents who can see him not through their pain but for who he really is. The baby woke with a soft cry, his tiny hands reaching out. Instinctively, Karen held him close. For a brief second, David stepped forward, not to argue but to touch his son's hand. The baby wrapped his fingers around his father's thumb and something unspoken passed between them. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Weeks passed. The custody case faded from the public's attention, but online the episode went viral. Millions debated whether the baby's voice had been real or fake. Some believed Karen completely, others mocked her, but none of them saw what happened when the cameras stopped rolling. After the hearing, Karen began therapy. At first, she resisted. She told herself she didn't need help, that she was fine, but the sessions were different. They weren't about guilt or shame, they were about silence, about learning how to sit in it without breaking. Her therapist, a calm woman with kind eyes, asked her one question that changed everything. When was the last time someone listened to you, really listened? Karen had no answer. For the first few weeks, she cried more than she spoke. Slowly, her words began to change. She stopped talking about voices and started talking about feelings, the loneliness, the fear, the way the world had made her small. David joined a few sessions later. Their first session together was tense, two people staring at the ghosts of what they'd once been. But over time, the walls began to crack. One day, after a long silence, Karen looked at him and said, "You were right, I wasn't hearing him, I was hearing me." David reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I know, but you don't have to do it alone anymore. For the first time in a long time, Karen smiled. It wasn't wide or dramatic, just small, fragile, real. Months passed. The recording stopped. The apartment that once echoed with whispers grew quiet, but this time the silence didn't feel empty. One morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains. Karen was in the kitchen making coffee, the baby playing with blocks on the floor. The sound of his laughter filled the room, pure, beautiful, unfiltered. Then out of nowhere, he looked up at her, smiled, and said, "Mama." Karen froze, the mug nearly slipped from her hand. She turned, eyes wide. "Say that again," she whispered. "Mama," he said again, clearer this time, followed by a giggle. Tears filled her eyes, but they weren't the tears of denial or confusion, they were tears of truth. For the first time, she wasn't hearing what she wanted, she was hearing what was. She lifted him into her arms and held him tight. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did." It wasn't about being special anymore, it was about being real. A few months later, Karen returned to court not for another hearing but to finalize shared custody. Judge Judy, as sharp as ever, recognized her instantly. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I see you survived my courtroom." Karen laughed softly, "Barely." "You look different," Judy observed, "lighter." "I guess I finally stopped trying to make noise," Karen said, and started listening. Judge Judy nodded approvingly. "That's the hardest part, listening to what's true, not what's comfortable." Before she left, Karen placed a small envelope on Judy's desk. Inside was a photograph, her baby, smiling, with a note that read, "He finally said it, for real this time. Thank you for making me hear the silence first." Judge Judy looked at the photo for a long moment, then smiled, not the sharp smile of justice served, but the quiet one of understanding. That night, after everyone had gone, Judy sat in her chambers, staring at the photo under her desk lamp. She handled thousands of cases, seen every shade of human failure and redemption. But this one stayed with her not because of the absurd claim, but because it reminded her of something she'd learned long ago. Behind every wild story, every outburst, every lie, there's a heart that just wants to be heard. And sometimes, the loudest people are the ones who have spent the longest being ignored. She set the photo down gently, turned off the lamp, and whispered to the empty room. "Every child deserves truth, and every parent deserves a second chance to find it." In a world obsessed with noise, silence is the hardest truth to face. Karen Mitchell's story wasn't about a talking baby, it was about a mother learning to listen again. And in Judge Judy's courtroom, truth didn't just win. It healed.